little bit about, I had an opportunity, and I gave a talk before a group, very nice people, and they were very friendly, very sociable, very helpful, and it was very nice, a very nice group of people. But, you know, like Joan said to me as soon as we got in the car, that, you know, I might have been a little heavy for the first time, and I agree. She was right. Every so often, she's right. Anyhow, it probably was a little strong, and there were some people there that had some problems with it, but for the most part, I mean, they were very, very nice and very, you know, cooperative and nice, even if they might not have understood it all. There was one question in particular that I'd like to comment on, and one gentleman seemed to take a little exception when I presented the statement of archaeologist Zev Herzog of Tel Aviv University in Israel, that the stories of the Old Testament never happened, and he was troubled by that, and of course you could multiply him by millions who would be troubled by that, you know. And as he said, well, you know, you can say this guy said that, but there are many others who think differently. That, you know, that other scholars would disagree. That's true. That's true. I guess what drew me to Zev Herzog is this guy is saying this in the middle of Israel. I mean, you know, where he could really conjure up a hostile audience, but he said it, and I just thought we'd look at that for a bit. You know, when you get questioned in a situation, and I've never really wanted to get into any kind of confrontation with anybody, and I certainly wouldn't in this particular case, and it was fine. And the man is right. There are a lot of people who don't agree with this. But let me just show you, and this was basically the slide that drew that concern. That's Zev Herzog. And he said, the many Egyptian documents known to us do not make any reference to the sojourn of the children of Israel in Egypt. In other words, that whole thing with the Exodus, supposedly, and the Egyptian Pharaoh and all of that stuff, nobody kept records more succinctly than the Egyptians, and there's not a mention of it. There's no mention of that in Egypt. There's no mention of the events of the Exodus. And Herzog says that generations of scholars tried to locate Mount Sinai and the stations of the tribes of Israel in the desert. That's the 12 tribes. And despite all of this diligent research, not one site was identified that could correspond to the biblical picture. Professor Herzog of Tel Aviv University, an Israeli archaeologist, is drawing fire for claiming that the biblical history of the Jewish people is probably fiction. And I told the folks Sunday, you know, I would change this word from probably fiction to mythology. You know, because that's a big difference. Somebody writes a fictional story, but it's another thing when mythology is at the base of it. And of course, this gentleman said, well, there are other scholars who would disagree. And but here's the thing that's so hard. Most people will take these scriptures literally based on faith. Okay? They have faith in their church, in their pastor. They have faith in their traditions, their family, and so forth. Because, as Professor Herzog said, if you search the annals of all archaeological research, there's no evidence. Nothing. Nothing. And as you can see that Herzog makes the point that research has tried to find something, but there was nothing. I don't now, in addition to Professor Herzog, I wanted to introduce you to someone you may not have heard of before, and his name is Moses Maimonides. Moses Maimonides. And you know, that's supposed to be, he sat for a painting, so I guess that's what he looked like. But who was he? Who was Moses Maimonides? Okay, it says here that he was March something to December 13th, 1135 to December 13th, 1204. A rabbi, physician, philosopher in Morocco and Egypt during the Middle Ages. He was one of the various medieval Jewish philosophers who also influenced the non-Jewish world. And although his copious works on Jewish law and ethics were initially met with opposition during his lifetime, he was posthumously acknowledged to be one of the foremost rabbinical arbiters and philosophers in Jewish history. And this is how prestigious he was. Today, his works and his views are considered a cornerstone of Jewish thought and study. A cornerstone of Jewish thought and study. Now, in considering that archaeologist Zev Herzog said that the biblical stories never happened, what does Moses Maimonides say? Okay, every time that you find in our books a tale the reality of which seems impossible, walking on water, talking snakes, talking donkeys, people flying up in the air, all of that kind of stuff. A story which is repugnant to both reason and common sense, then be sure that the tale contains a profound allegory veiling a deeply mysterious truth. And the greater the absurdity of the letter, the deeper the wisdom of the spirit. Moses Maimonides, Jewish theologian, historian, and so forth and so on. Now, here's something up here. These were Galileo's letters to Christina. It was on the same thing. But what Galileo was talking about the church, remember, Galileo was an astronomer and scientist and everything. But he says, they, meaning the church, have endeavored to spread the opinion that such Copernican propositions in general are contrary to the Bible, and Copernicus, and are consequently damnable and heretical in purely physical matters, where faith is not involved. They would have us altogether abandon reason and the evidence of our senses in favor of some biblical passage, though beneath the surface meaning of its words, this passage may contain a different sense. So this is what Galileo was saying, the same thing. You know, and he called that the stuff, you know, some biblical passage that, you know, where we have to abandon reason. I've said that for years, that people go to church and check their brains at the door. So here you have Galileo saying that. But here, more importantly, Moses Maimonides saying that when you see these bizarre things in the scriptures, it's a profound allegory, veiling a deeply mysterious truth. So what Galileo is saying and what Moses Maimonides is saying is the same thing that Zev Herzog said, it didn't happen. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but in a literal sense, it didn't happen. See? Now focus on that one phrase there, contains a profound allegory. That's what Moses Maimonides said. When you see something in there and says the lady was talking to a snake or some, you know, crazy stuff, or the guy threw an axe head into the river and it floated, you have to look at that and say, what in the world does that really mean? Because it's nonsense. All right? When you read something that seems nonsensical, it contains a profound allegory. So I've got here an agreement between Zev Herzog of today, Galileo of before, and Moses Maimonides of before. But so that word allegory is very interesting. Okay, what does allegory mean? Let's take a look. Allegory etymology, Middle English, so forth, so, from that, to speak publicly, blah, blah, blah. Date 14th century. The expression by means of symbolic, fictional figures and actions of truth or generalizations about human existence, an instance of an expression, a symbolic representation. So what Moses Maimonides told us was that when you read these bizarre things in the Bible, God took a rib out and made a woman out of it, all of that, it's allegory. In other words, by using symbolic fictional figures, the story is hiding truths about human existence. And you say, well, why was it hidden? Because we were dealing with the evolution of the human brain at that time, which had not come along to the point where it could even consider things such as the quantum fields, electrons, photons, all that kind of stuff. It had never even been considered. And so this was laid down until the human brain had evolved to the point where it can understand that. And keep in mind that the cornerstone of the Jewish faith, Maimonides, said that that's what the Scriptures are. Now, if that's not enough, let's go to the Bible itself. All right? The Bible itself in Galatians 4:22 said, it is written that Abraham had two sons, one by a bondmaid, the other by a free woman. He who was of the bondwoman was born after the flesh. He of the free woman was by promise. And what's the last line? Which things are an allegory. Now that's in the Bible. So now what do we have that says this stuff is not literal? Zev Herzog, archaeologist, Galileo, astronomer, Moses Maimonides, the cornerstone of Jewish study, and the Bible itself. And you know that the amazing thing about this is that the overwhelming majority of people who carry Bibles under their arms and all of that stuff will take every word of it literally. And by doing so, miss the entire thing. Now this story of Abraham and having children is one of the most famous stories in the Bible. Now what tip does the Bible, and the Bible always gives you a tip to say, whoa, you better think about this twice about whether this really happened. You know how in the message of the crucifixion of Jesus in the Bible, in the book of Matthew, gives you a big tip that this was not necessarily a physical thing, because right after Jesus dies, everybody gets out of their graves. They crawl out of their graves, and then they walk downtown to the mall or wherever they went, you know. I mean, that tells you, wait a minute here. This might not be the way it was. Because that never happened. Historically, it never happened, and if that didn't happen, then what is to say the crucifixion happened? Once again, I'm not saying it did not happen. What I'm saying is it did not happen literally, but it does happen, what's called spiritually. But what tip does the Bible give about the story of Abraham and Sarah and so forth? Here's the tip. There they are, Abe and Sarah. Genesis 17:16, God says, I will bless her, meaning Sarah, and give you a son, also of her. Then Abraham fell upon his face and laughed and said in his heart, shall a child be born to him that is 100 years old, and shall Sarah that is 90 years old bear? In other words, he's 100, she's 90, and they're about to have a kid. See, and so the Bible is saying that, stop here. What did Moses Maimonides say? When you see something which is repugnant to your common sense, stop and look, because there is a deep message contained there. All right? And you see it. Does it challenge your common sense that a man 100 is going to have intercourse with a woman 90 and they're going to have a baby? And so it is ridiculous for a reason. He's 100, she's 90, and let's just refresh ourselves with Moses Maimonides just real quickly, a story which is repugnant to both reason and common sense, okay? A tale, the reality of which seems impossible. This qualifies. A man 100, a lady 90, they're going to have a baby. The reality seems impossible, which it is. It is repugnant to reason and common sense. Moses Maimonides says it's an allegory. It contains a deep meaning about something else. And this is where so many people in the faith, whether it be Christian faith, would have missed, because they've never understood this. They just say, that's what it says, and I believe it. So the story never happened. Just as Moses Maimonides said, the story is a profound allegory veiling a deeply mysterious truth. And the Bible itself takes time to explain what the truth in this story is. Here's the story. Abraham has intercourse with his wife's maid, Hagar. And guess what happens? She has a baby. Where the Bible says such things are an allegory means that you have to look for a deeper meaning, a symbolic meaning, and in this case, the Bible itself gives it to you. Watch. Here they are again. Galatians 4:24. Which things are an allegory? For these are two covenants. The one from the Mount Sinai, which connects to bondage, which is Hagar. It could Agar or Hagar. I used to call her Hagar. For this Agar is Mount Sinai in Arabia and answers to Jerusalem, which now is, and is in bondage with her children. So in other words, Sarah's maid is a symbol of the physical side, the material side. The Jerusalem, which is over there in the Middle East, and you know, all the fighting and all that stuff. That's what this maid represents, okay? But it says here, Jerusalem, which is above, is free, which is the mother of us all. That's what Sarah represents. So what this is talking about is not two people, not three people, not kids. It's talking about your mind. You have a mind on the left side which is connected to the physical, to the three dimensions reality of planet Earth. And you know about Jerusalem, which is in the Middle East. But there is another Jerusalem which is inside of you, which is in the mind, in the right hemisphere, which is the mother of us all, the dwelling place of what science in your brain calls Pia Mater, tender mother. Okay? So here then we see this. We have a confirmation from the Bible itself that the story means something else other than the words. It's an allegory. And the Bible defines for us the nature of the story and what it really means. So just let's look step by step and we'll see here. Hagar and Sarah. Hagar is the left side. Sarah is the right side. And we're talking about the brain, the mind. Okay? Hagar is the physical, your body and the physical things around you. Sarah is what we call the spiritual side. Hagar answers to Mount Sinai, the place of where that word means sin, and the physical city of Jerusalem where all the conflict is. Sarah, on the other hand, answers to this new Jerusalem, which is the higher mind, the higher right hemisphere of the brain, touched in meditation. She is the spiritual city mother. Mount Sinai is, the word means thorn and desolate, lay waste and barren. And Jerusalem, it either is the city in the Middle East and Israel that we know about, or it's the invisible place of the mind where God dwells, the city of peace. So that's how the two are injected into the story in a mythological or allegorical way. All right? So the story of Abraham and Sarah, which is an extremely famous story in the Bible, never happened. And that is proven by the Bible itself. It is a story of a struggle between the physical, three-dimension side of the human being against the non-physical, invisible, quantum, or spiritual side. And that, my friends, is the nature of every story in the Bible. They did not happen, but they do happen. Every one of us is Abraham, whether you're male or female. And in a figurative sense, we intercourse with Hagar all the time. And we produce offspring which are our thoughts in our actions. We give birth to things out of communicating with the left side. Whether we take part in a school, or whether we take part in government, whether we take part in jobs or whatever it is, everything that we give thought to on that side, we produce both positive and negative results. That's Hagar. See? So we're intercoursing with Hagar all the time. See? Now, in our meditations, we seek to intercourse with Sarah. And there is produced in this quantum world of what we call spirit, the child of promise. And in this particular case, it turns out to be Isaac, basically the father of Judaism, basically. See? So then, in our everyday activities, we're intercoursing with Hagar, and we give birth to all of these different ideas. But in our meditation, we are intercoursing with Sarah, and she brings forth to us the child of promise. This is a quaint story. And it's made up about a family made up of Abraham and Sarah. They live alone. They don't have any children. He's 100, she's 90, but Sarah had a maid named Hagar. And when Abraham was 86, Sarah brought Hagar to him and told him to have sex with her, and Abraham then could have a son because she was barren. And you want to just, I want to just get down and put that down here. We don't want to get over there and close that, okay? Whoops. Okay, now I'll show you here. This is the picture of Sarah bringing, excuse me. Oh, all right. Pause, Charles. What in the world? All right, Charles, turn it on if they allow this picture on TV. You can see Sarah saying, please, Abe, have sex with my maid. And Abe has always got his hand on her shoulder, so he's not, actually fighting the deal here. But you can see in a literal way how the story is produced, okay? This is you and me. This is when we are in our normal left side, and this is when we are in our spiritual right side. You can see Abe saying there, well, Sarah, if I must, I must. I got to fulfill the word of God, Anyway, about 14 years later, after this thing, God promises to give Sarah a baby, even though she's 90 and Abe is 100. This is the child of promise, which is always given in the Bible to a woman who is either barren or a virgin. Every one of the males who turn out to be the heroes of the Bible are born of a woman who is either a virgin or who is barren. In this particular case, Sarah is barren. In other words, it is a spiritual child. It cannot be produced in the normal sexual way. It is produced in a spiritual, quantum, invisible way. So Isaac is born, and Isaac becomes the father of the Jewish people. But before this birth takes place, Sarah tells Abraham he wants Hagar and the child that they produced sent off into the desert to fend for themselves in the wilderness. Hagar has given birth to a child named Ishmael. And here is a portrait of Abraham with Sarah sitting back here, casting Hagar and the child out, and they go into the wilderness. Okay? Now there are two sides to this story. The Hebrew side has Isaac being the father of the Jewish religion, and the other side is equally fascinating because Ishmael becomes the father of the Muslim religion. The Bible portrays Ishmael in a negative light, whereas the Quran portrays Ishmael in a positive light. The problem with this, however, is the fact that the Bible we have tells us this is an allegory, tells us that Hagar represents the physical, and tells us that Sarah represents the spiritual, or the Jerusalem which is above. Now once we accept, and this is what you have to do, and this is what it is difficult for people, if I was to speak out of this place, to accept this. Once we can accept this as mythology, we can then unravel the story as a deep explanation as to what goes on in that quantum or spiritual realm which is within us all. We formulate our minds based on our physical contacts from birth. Our parents train us, our friends train us, the schools train us, the church trains us, the army trains us, the corporations train us. Everything is put together, and that's who we are. That's Hagar. That's Hagar. We never bother with the inner mind, which is accessible through meditation. There is where we are barren. There is where the wilderness exists, and you know why? Because you've never gone there. You don't know what is inside of yourself if you haven't gone there. But you know what the wonderful thing this story is saying? She's 90, no matter how long that beautiful place has been left barren, it is ready, as soon as you touch it, to bring forth to you the child of promise. That's what this story is all about. It's a very important story to all of us. And yet it's treated as some kind of a fiction, adventure story. It has nothing to do with people. It has nothing to do with sex. It is a symbolic story of the human mind, whether we are to be led in this life by the physical, three-dimensional, material realm, or we are to be led by the higher realm, which appears barren to us when we separate from thought, but is actually the place where the child of promise is born. That's exactly what the story of the Virgin Mary giving birth to Jesus is. Jesus is a child of promise. Elizabeth has a baby through the normal ways. John is not the child of promise, but Mary gives birth to Jesus, a child of promise, and she's a virgin. It goes through from the book of Genesis all the way on. You see, when a baby is born, the baby is born with the right hemisphere as a beautiful garden. If the child was raised to understand that, if the child was raised in meditation, that garden would nurture from the beginning time of his or her life. That's why children spin, because that's the true nature of God. That's the true nature of the universe. That's why children have secret friends that they talk to and see and that nobody else can see. But we know what happens? When we instruct them that it's only their imagination and soon they'll become just like us, and they do. And the beautiful garden of the mind becomes barren and filled with dust and weeds because nobody goes there. The Bible speaks of this place within us. It's the place of meditation. It's the place where we separate from the thoughts of the left side. Where Hagar is, we cast her away, and we go to the place of Sarah, to the right side. But because so few people go anymore, or now or for a long time, it's barren. And why is it barren? Because we are consumed by religion. We don't go in here to the temple. We go to church. We're going to the wrong place. Thus, this place of meditation has become a wilderness, a barren place that was once a beautiful garden because a few failed to look within themselves. Now, this is a quite startling, it's quite a startling scripture. It comes from Jeremiah 12:10, but look who's responsible for this barrenness. Jeremiah 12:10, many pastors have destroyed my vineyard. They have trampled my portion underfoot. They have made my pleasant portion a desolate wilderness. They have made it desolate, and being desolate, it cries out to me. The whole land is made desolate because no one considers it's mine. That's quite a thing. That's right, and you can go Jeremiah 12:10. There it is. The pastors did it. And you can go to any one of these pastors and they'll say, don't you go near this guy. Don't you go near that hidden meat. Oh, don't you go inside of yourself. You open yourself to devils and demons. They'll chase you with a fork. And you know what? People believe it. People believe it. You see the words, many pastors? A desolate wilderness, because they have told people not to separate from thought as Jesus instructed. They've told people not to energize the single eye as Jesus instructed. They've told people that the kingdom of God is not within them as Jesus instructed. And so the place is barren, like Sarah. But regardless of how barren it may be, and regardless of how long, when one goes there, the child of promise is brought forth. That's the whole meaning of the many stories in religious cultures of virgins giving birth, or those who are like Sarah, the barren giving birth. So if we read the story of Abraham and Sarah as if it really happened, then what do we have? We have a version of the young and the restless, or we have a version of As the World Turns, or something like that. It's what it is. Abraham getting tired of not having a kid. His wife said, go ahead and jump in with the maid. And all kinds of stuff happens. But on the other hand, if we understand this story's mythology, we are aware that if we will move into the wilderness of meditation and separate from the thoughts of the left of the physical side, then this child of promise will come alive within us. This is how important it is to understand these things, not in the realm of history, but in the realm of quantum, invisible spirit. And I'll tell you something. Let's say we've got Zev Herzog, Moses Maimonides, Galileo, we've got, who else did I have? The Apostle Paul in the Bible. All of them saying it's allegorical. All of them saying it's symbolic. Well, Jesus said it too. Look. Matthew 13:10, and the disciples came and said unto him, why do you speak to them in parables? And he answered, because it is given you to know the mysteries of the kingdom, but to them it is not given. Therefore speak I to them in parables, because they seeing see not, and hearing they hear not, neither do they understand. In other words, here is Jesus saying that what he's saying don't take literally. See? Zev said it, Galileo said it, Paul said it, Moses, Maimonides said it, and Jesus said it. It don't take it literally. Because there was a time for this to be revealed. See? Look at this. In Matthew 13:34, all these things Jesus spoke to the crowds in parables, and without a parable he did not speak to them. In other words, he never uttered a word that wasn't symbolic. He never uttered a word that didn't mean something else. Don't tell me, or don't write me, or call me. Yes, read it. Read it. So what do we have? We have the archaeologist from Tel Aviv in Israel saying biblical stories never happened. We have the man considered the cornerpost of Jewish literature and law, Moses Maimonides, saying these things didn't happen. We have the Bible saying the classic tale of Abraham and Sarah is allegory. It didn't happen. And we have Jesus never uttering a word but in a symbolic parable. And as I told you, let's sum all of this up. We got all of this information, and what did we say weeks and weeks ago? Where was the Bible written? In the center of Greek and Egyptian mythology, Alexandria, Egypt. All of the Bible stories are mythological. They mean something other than what they say The people never existed. The things never happened. But the things do exist now, and the things do happen now. Now let's look at a couple. Let's look at Noah's Ark. Noah's Ark. Noah's Ark never happened. But it does happen. The ark is the right hemisphere of your brain. That's where the ark is. People go looking on Mount Ararat and all over. I think I saw a piece of wood up there. Oh, it must be Noah's Ark. Oh, geez, I don't know. Look in here and you'll find it. When you go into meditation, you are entering Noah's Ark. You take two kinds of animals, you take your entire physical nature, both positive and negative, and you seal yourself in the ark of meditation. And the ark then will protect you through the external storms pounding on you and will lift you so that eventually you step up out onto the mountaintop having overcome this stuff. That's what it's for. That's what the story means. And the story says you take the unclean beast by two, which is a reference to the positive and negative natures of all human minds. And then taking the clean by seven is a reference to the seven chakras of the Hindus, or the seven seals of Revelation. And the ark then rises up the spine and sits at the mountaintop, which is the right hemisphere of the brain in the higher realms of consciousness. And you know what else? The flood came upon the earth in 7 days, which is another reference to the seven chakras or seals. You are Noah, and the ark is your inner place of meditation. Now, isn't that meaningful to you, that Noah's Ark is inside of you, and that you can go into the ark, and that if you get into that ark of meditation, you can ride out the storm, and when the storm has subsided, you'll come out on the mountaintop and overcome that? Or do you want to believe that this guy brought everything, 2 fleas, 2 ticks, 2 mosquitoes, everything? How about Joshua and the walls of Jericho? Here's one. There you go. There's some walls. That's some heavy-duty walls that fell down there. The walls represent the part of our inner being that keep us from the holy place, which is the temple of meditation inside of us. Oh, there's a lot of things that can keep us. Oh, I don't have time for that. I want to see the game. Oh, I can't go out tonight. Oh, it's cloudy. I think it's going to rain. Whatever. But anyhow, whatever it is. Oh, the pastor said I shouldn't do that. Whatever it is. There are all kinds of walls to keep you separated from that holy city inside of yourself on the right side. How can you get into that holy inner place, which is also the ark? But for now, in this story, think about the 7 chakras of the 7 seals and consider this scripture. Joshua 6:4, and 7 priests shall bear before the ark 7 trumpets of ram's horns, and the 7th day you shall walk around the city 7 times, and the priest shall blow the trumpet. Do you really have to do that? I mean, doesn't it, can you see it there? Why the 7? And the Bible in the book of Revelation talks about the 7 seals and the 7 angels and all of this stuff, and rising up the backside, which is the spine. Yes, there is Hinduism in the book of Revelation, which is Christian. There are other things here to see besides the number 7. Notice the trumpets are from ram's horns. The ram is the symbol of Amun or Amen, the Egyptian sun god. It is the symbol of the power of enlightenment, the power of light. And the trumpet is the symbol of harmony that flows from the breath of meditation. So we have the meditation with the 7 chakras or 7 seals causing the wall to fall that blocks us from the God that is within us. As we start in the meditation and that energy rises up through the 7, that's marching around the city 7 times, and the blockage falls down, and we are taken into the holy city within us. We have the power of light or enlightenment that we receive within. This is what brings down the walls. Now, there's another clue to this. As meditative mythology. We've gotten Moses and Maimonides and everybody, but let's go back to Zev Herzog in Israel. And he's going to tell you something about Joshua and Jericho. Herzog says there is no evidence that Joshua led the children of Israel into the Holy Land or brought down the walls of Jericho. Repeated excavations of various expeditions have only yielded disappointments. Get this. During the period when the conquest would have taken place, there were no cities there and, of course, no walls to bring down. What is ever going to tell me? This guy doesn't know what he's talking about? Then send him a letter. Send him an email. He's right in the middle of Israel. Do you think he would even dare say stuff like that unless he didn't have scientific documentation? There is not an archaeologist in the world that can say he's wrong because nobody has ever found anything. So instead of dwelling on a story that literally is silly, we consider its meaning, and we march around the wall 7 times in our meditation as the energy drives up through the 7 chakras or the 7 seals, and the wall of the city falls, and we're then with God. Let's take a look at Jonah and the whale, or Jonah and the big fish. Yeah. There he is. That's a good picture, isn't it? I mean, I thought that was pretty neat. Jonah and the big fish. Now, if you're going to take this literally, you know, and people do, I think even this one would be a bit much. The man lived inside of the whale for 3 days and 3 nights. Well, listen up there, I think I'm going to get a little sleep. Yeah, I'll get up early for breakfast. I mean, please. Do you hear Moses Maimonides saying, is that enough to be repugnant to common sense? Of course. But the story's about us again. We're Jonah. We have an initial God connection as children. But because of the physical attractions, we run from the God connection and we try to find it in church. The story has Jonah trying to run away from God by sailing on a ship. But when he gets on the ship, this big storm comes up, and the other people on the ship are a little bit superstitious, and they connect this to God. Oh, this must be God did this. How come everything was calm until that guy got on the boat? God must be angry with somebody. Must be the new guy. They pick Jonah up and toss him overboard. Now we're in the water, which I have shown you over and over. This is the second stage of meditative consciousness. Earth, water, fire, and the new mind. This is where all this stuff comes from. This is the Greek stages of consciousness when Jonah, earth, you and me, go into the water. Now we will struggle in our meditation to come up into the air so we can be touched by the fire or the spirit. All right? So what happens here, okay, Jonah in the water is swallowed by a big fish. And you know why this story is so clever? Because God in ancient mythology is symbolized as a big fish. Now here's the bit about the origin of the fish god. See this? Well, let's go on to the next one. Even today, ordinary Christians routinely make use of the fish symbol. See it here? Not fully understanding its origin. As with many religious symbols, it was co-opted from pagan sources. The symbol of the fish can be found in ancient Chinese, Indian, Egyptian, Greek, Roman, and Scandinavian goddesses' religion. One Greek fish goddess, Aphrodite, Salacia, was worshipped on Fridays by followers who ate fish. I used to hide under the stands at the baseball game and sneak a hot dog. And engaged in sexual activities. This practice, sans the sex, was later appropriated into the church tradition. Now, let me show you, when you say about tradition, I'll show you something interesting. It's all I'm showing for you is interesting, where a lot of this stuff comes from. It finds its way even into the religious garb and tradition. First, I'm going to show you the fish god. There he is. Now, this guy is really a fish god. He's a man, but he's a fish. Now, take a look at the top of his head, all the way up to the top. You see the fish with the open mouth there? Can you see that? Way up the top there. See that? This is Dagon, or Ea, the fishman. What's interesting about the fishman, too, Ea particularly, is traces itself to John the Baptist. But let's not get involved with it. Take a close look at that fish on the top of his head, open. Now let me show you what is called a mitre. You see it? Let me show you another picture. The late Pope, and you see the hat? That's where it comes from. That's where it comes from. So Jonah in the whale 3 days and 3 nights, and Jesus in the tomb 3 days and 3 nights are the same thing. Namely, being in the resting place of God, where the change takes place in Jonah, and Jesus becomes the Christ. Where? Inside in the fish. It's the place of meditation, where we rest and are touched by the personhood of God. Now let me show you something. I'll show you where the fish symbol took root in ancient religions, and eventually, was picked up by the different faiths. The symbol of the fish actually comes from the ancient thing called vesica piscis, which is this. This here are the two intersecting, connecting circles, and this is the fish symbol in the center. That's where it came from. It comes from Greek mathematics. What do they call that? Greek. What are these called? No, I'm talking about geometry. That's exactly right. Sacred geometry. Hippocrates. I don't know what I'd do without you. But this area in the center is the origin of the sign of the fish. This is a very, very great Greek and other symbol of the coming together. Now, let me show you how it got to the fish thing. Here it is here, you see. And it takes on the appearance of the fish. And before you know it, in the Christian religion, this appeared. It became the fish with, this is the Jesus or Christ symbol in the center of it, or Christ's Greek lettering in the center of it. So we see on the left side, vesica piscis, which forms the fish sign in the center. And there on the right is the Christian sign of the fish representing Jesus. Now, this is interesting. The vesica piscis is also the opening for the new birth, as you see here. And this is really fascinating. I think you get it. Vesica piscis, you see it? The crucible of the creating process, an opening to the womb from which all geometric forms are born. A symbol of the fusion of opposites and a passageway through the world's apparent polarities. The geometric image through which light was born, also the geometry for the human eye, and where all life is born. And people miss all of this stuff. They miss it all. Now, what is so important to us, or at least it should be important to you, is we're living in a time when there are two major signs in the cosmos revealed by Hubble that are vesica piscis. The first one we'll look at is supernova 1987A. That's from the Hubble telescope. This is the vesica piscis, here and here. And the place where birth takes place is on fire. The center of vesica piscis is on fire. And NASA predicted an explosion of this that could be seen on, that will be seen on the Earth even in the daytime. They initially predicted it would happen in 2005. Obviously, they were wrong. But I have no doubt, and they have no doubt, it's going to happen. And I have proposed to you that it is the seventh seal of the book of Revelation, for other reasons that, and I don't have the time right now. The symbol of God, the seventh seal of Revelation, will explode in a great light. The other vesica piscis is the Hourglass Nebula, seen by Hubble, right there. Here we have, again, the intersecting, and there in the center of the birth canal of the vesica piscis is an eye. And when we zoom in to the center of the eye, if you just pull it back a little bit, you can see almost like the nose here. I mean, your mind creates it a little bit. But here is the center of vesica piscis. I know when I had a cataract surgery done, I have an Indian doctor who did it. And he did such a wonderful job, and I was so impressed that I brought him. I had this printed, and I put it in a frame, and we brought it to him. And he was quite startled. He just sat and looked at it. He said, "That's a human eye." And what just strangles me is that people, they don't know it's even there. There's a scripture in the book of Psalms that says, "I will guide you with my eye." And so all of these things then together that we have shared together and we have talked about here tonight together bring us to the point of saying, how important is it that we understand the Bible for what it is telling us about the reality of what we call the spiritual realm, instead of looking at the stories and saying, "I believe everything. I believe the snake talked. I believe the donkey talked. I believe all of this stuff." Instead of looking at that, we don't dare follow the corner post of Jewish literature and law, Moses Maimonides, who said, "Hey, use your head here. Use common sense. These things don't happen. They can't happen. What does it mean?" And that's never been. You can go into any church you want, and when they get up to talk about this stuff or read from the scriptures, they'll say the snake came up and they had a conversation. The guy was riding on the donkey, he hit the donkey, and the donkey turned around and said, "What the heck are you doing that for?" It's in the Bible. Yes, Jacob sat there and he saw 7 angels going up and down on the sky. Certainly he did. He was stoned. And that's where they saw things like that. You can actually, and I mean, I could stand here for hours and hours and take just about every story that you want to read in the Bible and tell you what it means from a spiritual or quantum standpoint. I mean, off the top of my head, let's take the story of, what was it, Hercules? Is he the guy that had the haircut? Samson. And Delilah. She cut his hair, and they come in and arrested him. But before that, he'd pick up cows and throw them up in the air. He'd knock buildings down and all that stuff. But she cut his hair off, and he couldn't do anything. That's stupid. It defies logic. It's repugnant to reason. What's it mean? Those people, in those times believed that hair was a sign of spiritual growth. The longer it was, the stronger was the spirit. So what it's saying is that with the spirit growing from with the higher realms of a person, that person can overcome anything. But once it's cut away by whatever, by religion, by corporations, by churches, by schools, whatever cuts it away, you're finished. You're weak. See, every single one of those stories, you'll find David taking 5 smooth stones to hit the giant Goliath in the middle of the forehead. And why did he pick up 5? Because he took the 5 senses: sight, touch, taste, smell, and hearing. And if he had not taken every one of them, something he heard would have defeated him. Something he saw would have defeated him. He had to take control of the 5 senses. And once he took control of the 5 senses, he could slay the giant. It's talking about us. That never happened. Okay? So all of these stories mean something very, very personal for you. And once you understand them in that way, then you will find that this Bible is not a holy book, not a spiritual book, but a book given from a higher realm to define for you the very existence of your life, where you are, where you came from, where you're going, and how you can be safe from the myriads of catastrophes that pound at you every day. And it's what I say to people all the time. Do you want to learn the real baptism of how you can get your mind renewed, or do you want to simply get your head wet? It's that simple. And basically, it's up to you. Okay, well, thank you, and we'll see you next time.